All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. It is Monday, May 28th, 2018. It's Memorial Day, Memorial Day 2018, and we are live. All right, so a lot of people celebrate Memorial Day, but a lot of people don't know the history of Memorial Day, okay? So we're going to talk about the African American roots, African American origins of Memorial Day. Okay, and a lot of people don't know about this. Some people may have heard a little something about it over the past 3 or 4 years. Okay, but we're going to deal with that. Okay, all right. So share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay, because we're going to deal with. We talk some about the history of the Civil War, deal with the history of Memorial Day, deal some with the history of slavery and the history of this country as well. All right. Okay. And follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network as well. All right. Okay. So a lot of people today may have gone barbecuing, may have gone to cookouts. You may have gone to the mall for a Memorial Day sale or something like that, or spent time with your family, right? Now, Memorial Day is the last Monday in May. It's celebrated the last Monday in May, and is when we honor our dead soldiers or fallen soldiers who have served in the military, okay, basically the U.S. military. Now, it also marks the unofficial start of summer and is celebrated by cookouts, 3-day weekends, etc. Okay, and we know, a lot of banks and things like this were closed today. The U.S. Postal Service was closed. A lot of people travel on Memorial Day as well. So Memorial Day weekend, usually on the news, they talk about the price of gas, and the price of gas is going to be higher because there's an increased demand because of people traveling. Now, many people don't know that Memorial Day has its origins with African Americans at the end of the Civil War. Many people don't know, and many African Americans don't know this also, that Memorial Day has its origins with African Americans at the end of the Civil War. Now, in 1966, the US government declared Waterloo, New York, the official birthplace of Memorial Day. Now, Waterloo, New York, first celebrated Memorial Day, or Decoration Day, as it was called then, on May 5th, 1866, the year after the Civil War ended. And Waterloo, New York was chosen because it hosted an annual community-wide event during which businesses closed and residents decorated the graves of soldiers with flowers and flags. Okay. Now, if we look at a little bit of the history of Memorial Day, which was originally called Decoration Day. Okay, this is the normal history that's told about Memorial Day that does not deal with the African American influence, right? So on May 5th, 1868, 3 years after the Civil War ended, okay, so the Civil War ends in 1865, basically June 2nd, 1865, and you have the 13th Amendment ratified in December of 1865, right? So 3 years after this, on May 5th, 1868, General John A. Logan, who was a leader of an organization for Northern Civil War veterans, called for a nationwide day of remembrance later that month, okay, later in the month of May 1868. He said, quote, "The 30th of May, 1868 is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet, churchyard in the land," end quote. Okay. Now, the date of Decoration Day, as it was called, as he called it, was chosen because it was not the anniversary of any particular battle. Okay. And this was something for not just the North to celebrate, but also the South to celebrate as well. So when you study the history of the Civil War, you know that the Civil War totally devastated the South, but the North was devastated as well. So there were efforts also to try to bring about a healing, okay? And we're freezing up here. So let's see what's going on. Hold on, stand by. Freezing up, not sure why. Can you all hear me? Okay, let's continue here. Let me just make sure you all can hear me. All right, let's continue here. Okay, so there were efforts, okay, to bring about a type of healing between the North and the South. Okay, so you're going to have a celebration like this. All right. Let me see. I'm not sure. Can you all still hear me? Can you all see me on Facebook? Okay, I'm seeing yes. You can hear me. Okay, yes. Okay. So it must be my phone that's acting up. Okay, good. All right, so let's continue here because I'm monitoring it on my phone also. All right, so let's continue here. Okay, so on the first Decoration Day, okay, May 30th, 1868, General James Garfield made a speech at Arlington National Cemetery, and 5,000 participants decorated the graves of the 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Now, many northern states held similar commemorative events and reprised the tradition in subsequent years. Now, by 1890, 1890 is 6 years before the U.S. Supreme Court case of Plessy versus Ferguson, which legalizes basically separate and unequal, or separate and equal, and Jim Crow laws. Now, by 1890, each one had made Decoration Day an official state holiday. Southern states, on the other hand, continued to honor their dead on separate days until after World War I. Now, for decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May 30th, the date that General John A. Logan had selected for the first Decoration Day. But in 1968, the U.S. Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, okay? And it established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. So the Uniform Monday Holiday Act of 1968, they created more than one 3-day weekend. All right, and this was designed, to create 3-day weekends for federal employees. So the change went into effect in 1971. So starting in May of 1971, Memorial Day, they started celebrating it on the last Monday of May. Okay, and the same law also declared Memorial Day as a federal holiday. All right, so this is some of the basic background information that normally we would get when we look at the history of Memorial Day, okay? And you can check out history.com, the official website of the History Channel, history.com, and search for Memorial Day, okay? And they'll give you more information regarding that, all right? Now, when we look at the African American influence, okay, which less people know about, all right. Professor David W. Blight, B-L-I-G-H-T, Professor David W. Blight of Yale University. He's a professor of American history at Yale University, and he's also the director of the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition. The Gilder, G-I-L-D-E-R, Lehrman, L-E-H-R-M-A-N, the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition, okay? He's also the author of the Bancroft Prize-winning book, Race and Reunion, The Civil War in American Memory, okay? So he was doing research he was doing research some years ago, back around the year 2000 or so, or actually about 1997. He was doing some research at Harvard University, okay? He was in the Harvard University library doing research for his book, Reunion and Race, and he stumbled upon a box containing the paperwork of a Union Civil War soldier, Union Veterans Organization, and a folder labeled First Decoration Day, okay? So if we look at a little history of the Civil War, so we could put this all in context, right? So rather than accepting Abraham Lincoln's leadership as president, he's elected president-elect November 6, 1860. He was the candidate for the Republican Party. Okay, Republican Party was formed just 6 years prior in 1854. And the Republican Party was organized by groups of abolitionists who were fighting to abolish slavery. And they were a counter political party to the Democratic Party, which was the party of the slaveholders, the plantation owners, things like this. Okay. All right. So you're going to have South Carolina initially that secedes from the Union December 20th, 1860. Okay. This is about 6 weeks after Abraham Lincoln becomes president-elect. Then by February of 1861, South Carolina is going to be followed by Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, and Texas. And they're going to form the Confederate States of America, the CSA, okay, in February of 1861. Now, the Confederacy is going to elect Mexican War veteran, Mexican War hero, and former Secretary of War Jefferson Davis to be the president of the Confederacy. And they're going to begin organizing an independent government modeled based upon the U.S. Constitution, but they're going to have caveats guaranteeing slavery because these states are seceding, 11 in total. They are seceding from the Union. They're breaking away from the Union because they want to maintain slavery. They fear that Abraham Lincoln is going to free the slaves, okay? Now, Lincoln gives his inaugural address on March 4th, 1861, okay? And in his inaugural address, to relieve the fears of other southern states and to keep them from seceding from the Union, because you just the month before you had 7 states to break away from the U.S. Lincoln proclaimed that it was his duty to maintain the Union, and he declared that he had no intention of ending slavery where it existed, and he had no intention of repealing the fugitive slave law. And this was a position that horrified African Americans and African American abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and their white allies like William Lloyd Garrison, okay? Now, Lincoln's statement, however, did not satisfy the Confederacy. And on April 12th, they attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, which was a federal stronghold, okay? And this is going to start the Civil War. Civil War started April 12th, 1861, all right? So soon after the start of the Civil War, you're going to have 4 more states that join the Confederacy: Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. They're going to join the Confederacy, so they all make up the Confederate States of America, including South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, okay? So you're going to have about 620,000 soldiers who were killed in the U.S. Civil War, which lasts from April 12, 1861 to June 2nd, 1865. You have about 2.4 million people who served in the Civil War, basically the majority of them all men. We know Harriet Tubman served in the Civil War also. She was a nurse and she was a spy. And Harriet Tubman actually led a Civil War. She led a military raid on June 2nd, 1863, called the Combahee River Raid in South Carolina, where this eventually freed 750 enslaved Africans. This was known as the Combahee River Raid, June 2nd, 1863, led by Harriet Tubman. She was the only woman to lead a military raid during the Civil War, all right? Now, in something of an anticlimax, General Joseph E. Johnston handed over the last Confederate army to General Sherman near Durham, North Carolina on April 26, 1865, all right? So professor and historian David Blight of Yale University, he was doing research at Harvard University's library for his book, Reunion of Race, okay? When he stumbled upon a box containing the paperwork of a Union Veterans Organization and a folder labeled First Decoration Day, First Decoration Day. Okay. Now, the information found there led him to South Carolina's former Washington Race Course and Jockey Club, Washington Race Course and Jockey Club, which was a prestigious horse racing track that was turned into a prison for Union soldiers. Okay. And you're going to have many soldiers who died there, but were not buried properly. Okay. Now, if you saw my presentation, I did a Facebook Live broadcast back on May 17th, I think it was, May 17th. And it was dealing with the history of the Kentucky Derby, okay, and African Americans in horse racing, all right, because African Americans used to dominate horse racing. And we were racing even during slavery, all right? And the first Kentucky Derby was ran on May 17th, 1875, okay? And 13 of the 15 jockeys in the first Kentucky Derby were African Americans, okay? Some of them former slaves, right? And I'm looking for my notes on the Kentucky Derby, on the horse racing. I don't know where I put them. I just saw them earlier today. But the first Kentucky Derby was won by Oliver Lewis. Oliver Lewis was a 19-year-old African-American man. I think he was a former slave, actually, okay? But it was won by Oliver Lewis, okay? And the trainer who trained the horse that he won, the horse's name was Aristides. The trainer was an African-American man also, and he was a former slave, okay? So we had a history, and a lot of your early winners of the Kentucky Derby were African Americans, all right? And horse racing was a for white people to go to watch horse races, right? This was something that the genteel class did, the leisure class, the wealthy class. This is something that they did, okay? And you're going to have a lot of these horse races that take place in the South, because this is where the majority, at this time, this is where the majority of the plantations are, the slave owners, things like this, right? So horse racing and the horse tracks were symbols of wealth, okay? They were symbols of wealth, white symbols of wealth, and basically symbols of white supremacy also, all right? So you have these Southerners who are going to turn this horse track into a prison for Union soldiers, okay? And I don't know where the hell my notes are. I just saw them earlier today. I don't know. They'll turn up. I just had them. I just saw them earlier today. Okay. But anyway, all right. So on May 1st, 1865, freed slaves gathered in Charleston, South Carolina, to commemorate the death of Union soldiers and the end of the American Civil War. All right. Now, 3 years later, this is when General John Logan on May 5th is going to announce that Decoration Day will be celebrated on May 30th. So he issued the special order that May 30th, 1868 be observed as Decoration Day, the first Memorial Day, a day set aside, quote, for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet, churchyard in the land, end quote, all right? So you're going to have thousands of African-American Charlestonians, mostly former slaves, who remained in the city and conducted a series of commemorations to declare their sense of the meaning of the war, all right? So the largest of these events, and unknown until some extraordinary luck that Professor David Blight had doing research, took place on May 1st, 1865. Now, during this final year of the Civil War, the Confederates had converted the planters horse track, the Washington Race Course and Jockey Club, into an outdoor prison. Okay, as I said, and Union soldiers were kept in horrible conditions in the interior of this horse track. You're going to have at least 257 that died of exposure and disease and were hastily buried in a mass grave behind the grandstand. So you're going to have some 28 African-American workmen who go to the site and they're going to rebury the Union dead properly. And they built a high fence around the cemetery. They're going to whitewash the fence and they build an archway over an entrance on which they inscribe the words "Martyrs of the Race Course," "Martyrs of the Race Course." Okay, so you have to understand these former slaves. They look at these Union soldiers as heroes because it's the Union that's going to free the enslaved Africans. They're going to defeat the South as they go through different cities, go through different towns, go plantation to plantation, and defeat the South, bring these territories back into the Union. They're freeing the enslaved Africans. You're going to have some who are going to follow along, you follow behind these troops. You're going to have some that enlist and join as they are freed. Some are going to enlist and join with the Union as well, with the Union troops also. So African-American Charlestonians are then in cooperation with white missionaries. This is May 1st, 1865. And teachers are going to stage an unforgettable parade of 10,000 people on the slaveholders' racetrack. 10,000 people on the slaveholders' racetrack. The symbolic power of the low country planter aristocracy's horse track, where Europeans had displayed their wealth, their leisure, and influence, was not lost on the freed people. So here they are marching, okay? They're having a parade on the horse track, which was a symbol of their enslavement, a symbol of the wealth and the leisure of white supremacy, of Europeans in the South, okay? So a New York Tribune correspondent witnessed the event. And he described it this way. He said, quote, it was a quote, a procession of friends and mourners as South Carolina and the United States never saw before. A procession of friends and mourners as South Carolina and the United States never saw before. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? We're going to continue here. Just a second. Hey, this is just tuning in. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. So we're dealing with the history of the African-American roots and origins of Memorial Day. All right. So if you like this type of information, hey, be sure to register for the online courses that I teach, and they're all on demand. We have a bundle pack right now. You get 10 of them for only $60, regularly $130. It includes Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That's a 14-hour, 7-session online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history, not just history of slavery. We deal with Ancient Kemet, we deal with African history, we deal with the history of the Moors in Europe, okay? So you can register for that, and it's all on demand. You can watch as soon as you can go at your own pace, watch as soon as you register. And it's also available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? All right, and for those in the Detroit area, I will be doing a presentation on Tuesday, May 29th, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. This is for children, but the adults can come also. They're going to be about 156 to 12th graders there. We're going to show excerpts of the documentary Out of Darkness, dealing with Nile Valley civilization in ancient Egypt from director Amadeus Christ. And I'll do a presentation dealing with the film Black Panther. Okay, a Black Panther analysis, African culture, history, and Afrofuturism. This presentation I'm doing is designed for children. Adults can come also, but it's designed for youth. I'll do about a 30-minute presentation, okay? So it's a free event. Come on out Tuesday, May 29th, 2018, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit. Come on out, bring the family also. Okay. All right, let's continue. Okay, so you know, some of you, if you missed the presentation that I did dealing with the film, I'm sorry, dealing with the history of African American jockeys and us dominating horse racing in the Kentucky Derby, go back and watch it here on Facebook. Just click on videos, the African History Network on Facebook, click on videos. It's also on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep on YouTube. Now, African American jockeys won 15 of the first 28 of America's most important horse races at Churchill Downs. And like I said, we won the first Kentucky Derby also. But you're going to have jockeys like Isaac Murphy, who won the Kentucky Derby 3 times in 1884, 1890, and 1891. He was African American. He was the most basically successful jockey, basically in history for a long time. He had he won 44% of the races that he ran in. You're going to have people like Alonzo Lonnie Clayton, who won the Kentucky Derby at the age of 15. He was the youngest at the time to win the Kentucky Derby. He won in 1892. You're going to have jockeys like James Soup Perkins, who began racing at the age of 11. He won the Kentucky Derby in 1895. Willie Sims wins the Kentucky Derby in 1896 and 1898. Jimmy Wink Winkfield, okay, wins the Kentucky Derby in 1901, 1902. He was the last African American to win the Kentucky Derby in 1902. So we dominated not just the Kentucky Derby, we dominated horse racing also. This is after the Civil War ends, okay? But we're going to start racing as enslaved Africans also. And we were pushed out of horse racing because of Jim Crow, because white people conspired against African-American jockeys, sabotaged the horses, made death threats. Ku Klux Klan made death threats against Jimmy Wink Winkfield, okay? So this is how we got pushed out of horse racing also. This was after the Civil War ended. The prize money became big. White people became jealous. While we were enslaved and they owned us, if you had a enslaved African male who was good as a jockey, he can make you a lot of money. It's all right when we win prize money because it goes to the slave owner. But now that we're free and we can win money on our own, now all of a sudden there's a problem. Now, going back to the origins of Memorial Day, African American origins of Memorial Day. So in Professor David W. Blight's book, who's a professor of American history at Yale University, in his book, Race and Reunion, The Civil War in American Memory, he made the case for Charleston, South Carolina as Memorial Day's birthplace, going back to May 1st, 1865, as that city was the site of an obscure, possibly suppressed May 1865 event held at the racetrack turned war prison, as I explained, during which freedmen promptly reburied hundreds of Union dead, 257, found there, and then held a ceremony to dedicate the cemetery. He said African Americans founded Decoration Day at the graveyard of 257 Union soldiers labeled Martyrs of the Racecourse, May 1st, 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina. Okay. Now, the first Decoration Day at this event, the first Decoration Day as this event came to be recognized in some circles in the North, involved an estimated 10,000 people, most of them Black former slaves. During April of 1865, 28 Black men from one of the local churches built a suitable enclosure for the burial ground at the racecourse. In some 10 days, they constructed a fence 10 feet high, enclosing the burial ground, and landscaped the grave into neat rows. The wooden fence was whitewashed, and a workman inscribed Martyrs of the Racecourse, Martyrs of the Racecourse. At 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. in the morning of May 1st, the procession to this special cemetery began as 3,000 Black school children, newly enrolled in freedmen's schools. Freedmen's schools. So these are schools set up by abolitionists and things like this for formerly enslaved Africans set up by the Freedmen's Bureau, etc. Okay, 3,000 black school children newly enrolled in freedmen's schools, marched around the race course, each with an armload of roses and singing John Brown's Body, John Brown's Body. So Harper's Ferry, 1959, John Brown abolitionist, okay, who is trying to steal the guns and free enslaved Africans and start a revolution. Now, the children were Harper's Ferry, Virginia, 1859. Now, the children were followed by 300 black women representing the Patriotic Association, which was a group organized to distribute clothing and other goods among the free people, okay? Because we had all types of groups that were aiding the formerly enslaved African people, getting them, feeding them, getting them clothing, getting them enrolled in school. One of the things that the Freedmen Bureau did was take out ads in newspapers trying to find lost loved ones, okay? Because we were trying to put the family back together after slavery ended. Another thing that we did after slavery ended, many of us got legally married because we couldn't get legally married during slavery, but we valued family, we valued marriage as well. So this is one of the things, and the Freedmen Bureau helped with this. This is one of the things that we did after slavery ended also, legally got married. Now, the women carried baskets of flowers, wreaths, and crosses to the burial ground, okay? These 300 black women. The Mutual Aid Society, which was a benevolent association of black men, next marched in cadence around the track and into the cemetery, followed by large crowds of white and black citizens, okay? And we're going to organize these mutual aid societies, these benevolent societies. We're going to organize, and these were types of co-ops also. We're going to organize these type of societies that raise money to bury the dead when African Americans would die newly freed and didn't have money, okay, to bury loved ones. We raise money for the sick, things like this. We had these different organizations and societies that did this. Now, all dropped their spring blossoms on the graves in a scene recorded by a newspaper correspondent. Quote, when all had left the holy mounds, the tops, the sides, and the spaces between them were one mass of flowers. Not a speck of earth could be seen. And as the breeze wafted the sweet perfumes from them, outside and beyond, there were few eyes among those who knew the meaning of the ceremony that were not dim with tears of joy, end quote. Now, while the adults marched around the graves, the children were gathered in a nearby grove where they sang America, Will Rally Around the Flag, and the Star Spangled Banner. These three songs, America, Will Rally Around the Flag, and the Star Spangled Banner. Now, I don't know if they sung the third stanza of the Star Spangled Banner, which talked about no refuge for the hireling or the slave. I don't know if they sung that. I don't know even though they knew about that. Okay. But I'm sure today they would be supporting Colin Kaepernick and boycotting the NFL. All right. So the people who said 3 weeks ago when Kanye West was acting a fool and talking about slavery sounds like a choice, it was all y'all there for 400 years. He has a poor understanding of history. But the people who talked about 3 weeks ago what they would have done back during slavery, they would have been with Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner and all this stuff, and they would have ran away. I hope you boycott the NFL. I hope you're going to boycott the NFL. Now, the official dedication ceremony was conducted by the ministers of all the black churches in Charleston, South Carolina, with prayer, the reading of biblical passages, and the singing of spirituals. Black Charlestonians gave birth to an American tradition. African-American Charlestonians gave birth to an American tradition. In so doing, they declared the meaning of the war in the most public way possible by their labor, their words, their songs, and their solemn parade of roses, lilacs, and marching feet on the old Planters racetrack or race course. After the dedication, the crowds gathered at the racecourse grandstand to hear some 30 speeches by Union officers, local Black ministers, and abolitionist missionaries. Picnics, as he said, quote unquote, picnics ensued around the grounds, cookouts, and in the afternoon, a full brigade of Union infantry, including colored troops, marched in double column around the martyrs' graves and held a drill on the infield of the race course. The war was over, and Memorial Day had been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. Now, although contemporaneous accounts from the Charleston Daily Courier, the newspaper, Charleston Daily Courier, describe and document the 1865 ceremony that took place there, and the event was one of the earliest known observances, similar to what we would now recognize as Memorial Day, whether it was truly the first such ceremony and what influence, if any, it might have had on later observances are still matters of contention. Professor David Blight of Yale University, professor of American history, termed it, quote unquote, the first Memorial Day because it predated most of the other contenders, but he noted he has no evidence that it led to General Logan's call for a national holiday in May 5th of 1868, when General Logan called for the 30th of May to be Decoration Day. Professor David Blight said, quote, I'm much more interested in the meaning that's being conveyed in that incredible ritual than who's the first, he said, okay? Snopes.com has a really good article where that citation came from, the origins of Memorial Day, from Snopes.com. All right, how's everybody doing? Hey, if you're just tuning in, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Be sure to follow our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. And we're talking about the African-American origins of Memorial Day. African-American origins of Memorial Day, or the Memorial Day's African-American roots, okay? If you like this type of information, want to learn more about our history, be sure to register for the online courses that I teach. We have them in a bundle pack. You get 10 right now in the bundle pack, normally $130. It's on sale for $60. We just posted the information there on the thread of the broadcast. You can also go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com is right on the homepage of our website. You can register there. They're all on demand. You can start watching at your own. You can watch at your own pace. And it includes ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, where they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, where they didn't teach you in school. So that's a 14-hour, 7-session online course. We deal with thousands of years of history, okay? And the great thing about Snopes.com is they show you the evidence so you can go research it yourself. So I tell people, you don't have to believe a word that I say. Go do your own research. Proper documentation ends all conversation, okay? So you can, Snopes.com, they provide you with the evidence. You can go research that yourself. You don't have to take their word for it, all right? Okay, and I do extensive research. As you all know, you can watch my videos. You can see that yourself. All right, now, when we look at the evolution of Memorial Day, right? So Memorial Day as Decoration Day gradually came to be known, originally honored only those who died during the Civil War, died fighting in the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. But during World War I and the U.S. involvement in World War I from 1914 to 1918, the United States found itself embroiled in another major conflict. And the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all of the wars. So for decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May 30th, the date that General John A. Logan chose, right, back in 1868, and as the first Decoration Day. But in 1968, as I said at the beginning, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. This change went into effect in 1971. Okay, and this same law also declared Memorial Day as a federal holiday. So while the banks are closed, U.S. Post Office, things like this, right? Now, some Memorial Day traditions, cities and towns across the United States host Memorial Day parades each year, often incorporating military personnel and members of veterans organizations. Some of the largest parades take place in Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. Americans also observe Memorial Day by visiting cemeteries and memorials. On a less somber note, many people throw parties and barbecues on the holiday, perhaps because it unofficially marks the beginning of summer. Okay. And also check out the article for more information. Check out the article from the root.com. Memorial Day, Blacks were first to celebrate, scholar says. Memorial Day, Blacks were first to celebrate, scholar says. That's from May 27th, 2011. Okay. Those in the Detroit area, I am doing, I'll be at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History on Tuesday, May 29th, doing a presentation. There is a event taking place for school children, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. We're going to show excerpts of the documentary Out of Darkness from director Amadeus Christ, which deals with ancient Africa, and we're going to deal with ancient Egypt, right? Nile Valley civilization. And I'll do about a 30-minute presentation dealing with the film Black Panther, African cultural influence. We'll talk about some African history. We'll talk about how some teachers are using the film Black Panther to teach African history and the history of colonialism. So this is taking place 10 a.m. to 12 noon, Tuesday, May 29th. At the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, 315 East Warren Avenue in Detroit. It's a free event, open to the public. Parents are coming also. Adults could come as well. And I'll have my DVD lectures there. I have 2 presentations I've done dealing with the film Black Panther, and we'll have them on sale tomorrow. They're also available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we have them on DVD. One of them is on DVD as well as digital download. That's a Black Panther analysis, African culture, history, and Afrofuturism. That's about a 3-hour presentation I've done. We'll post the information here. The thread of the broadcast is also available right at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. There's a second presentation I've done called Lessons from the Film Black Panther, Lessons from the Film Black Panther, Economic Guerrilla Warfare, Political Self-Defense, and How to Wakanda the Vote. Economic Guerrilla Warfare, Political Self-Defense, and How to Wakanda the Vote, okay? All right, so that's, and we have a bundle pack, an 8 DVD Black Panther bundle pack also, where you get 5 of my presentations, including 2 on the film Black Panther and 3 documentaries. That's on sale $80, regularly $130. It includes the documentary 1804, dealing with the history of the Haitian Revolution, and 2 documentaries I'm in, Elementary Genocide Part 3, from director Raheem Shabazz, and Black Friday Part 2, okay, from director Rick Mathis. All right, so how's everybody doing? We're going to go to some of your comments here. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing all right today. It's hot here in Detroit. Got up to like 90 degrees here. I think over 90, about 92, something like this. So Melvin says, stop watching sports and start watching our people's documentaries or read a book. Shirley said, hey, Sean, thanks for joining. Okay, yeah, you share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Shirley says, support Colin Kaepernick, take a knee to Kanye's neck. Okay, we don't want to encourage violence, but all right, you can stop. Don't watch NFL games when the season starts up. And post on social media that you're going to boycott the NFL this entire season. Just like professional sports, it's all good if they control you. Carmen, how you doing, Carmen? Ralph, get the course for the upbuilding of our community. Thanks, Shirley. All right. Have you registered for our online course, Shirley? You can get the bundle pack. They're all on demand. Amber is in Anaheim, California watching. Daphne watching from Minneapolis, Minnesota. All right. I thought the only black people in Minneapolis were Prince. Okay. But all right, there's still some black people in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Surely 10,000 people on the horse track, friends and mourners. Cameron Brown checking in from Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, the home of one of my heroes, Muhammad Ali. You see the pictures back there, Muhammad Ali from Louisville, Kentucky. How's my brothers and sisters doing tonight? She said. Daphne Brown, thank you, family. Okay. And we got Dorothy, Sean in Florida, Annette watching in New York City. Sheila said, love the network, just wish the sound didn't go out as often. Angie, like football today, the wealthy owners. Yeah. Okay, we got Shirley J. Carter also in Philadelphia. All right, let me get some of your new comments here. And then I'll give you a brief overview of the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach in school. Because well, most of these online courses I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, we have video clips, things like this. Okay, Shirley said, okay, they said just joking. Whoever said put the knee on Kanye's neck. Got Nathan, Hollywood, Florida. Hollywood, there's a Hollywood, Florida? No, Hollywood, California. There's a Hollywood, Florida. Okay. There's a Detroit, Texas. There's a Detroit, Texas also. Mia is in Denver. Okay. Chandra in Richmond, Virginia, watching. Okay. Now, Sean said, as a general rule, I boycott all major league sports. It's a shame how much people get paid to play a game. Well, they generate revenue. They're getting a percentage. That's not the shame. The shame is the white supremacy of some of the owners. They're getting a percentage. Just like if you sell a product, you get a commission. They're getting a percentage of the revenue that they generate. So I'm not mad at the money they make. I'm mad at some of the white supremacist owners, how they treat them. And also, you have some, I get upset when I read about players that just blow their money because they don't know how to handle the money. Because the leagues offer financial courses and financial literacy courses, things like this, okay? That they have to take these courses because if they play their cards right, they could be set for the rest of their lives. Most of these guys, 99% of them will never have this type of earning potential for the rest of their lives. Majority of them are not going to get endorsements after they retire like Shaq does, like Shaquille O'Neal. They're not going to do endorsements for Icy Hots and the general auto insurance, okay? Sean said Hollywood, Florida is in South Florida, okay? Shirley said, is written permission required to show your DVD to small groups? No, that's fine, Shirley. You can show it to small. That's fine, Shirley. Go ahead. If you want to bring me in to do a presentation for your group or organization, we can make it happen. Email me at info@africanhistorynetwork.com. info@africanhistorynetwork.com. Okay. If you want to bring me in to do a presentation for your group or organization, or you want me to be on a panel discussion or moderate a panel discussion, okay, and we can make it happen. Email me at info@africanhistorynetwork.com. And all of my DVD lectures are available at our website, africanhistorynetwork.com also. If you want to wholesale my DVDs, contact me. We can make that happen also. We'll give you a wholesale discount. Usually it's 40% off the regular price, but we'll make it happen, okay? If you want to wholesale my DVD lectures also, okay? That all helps support the African History Network, helps us stay on the air, keep doing the research, pay the bills, etc. Okay. You can also donate to the African History Network if you like. PayPal.me/the AHN show. PayPal.me/the AHN show. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's look at this quickly here, right? So I talk often about how how our history in general is mistaught, but also the history of slavery is mistaught, right? So February 1st of 2018, first day of African American History Month, okay, I saw an article, and the Atlantic.com had this article that dealt with this 52-page study. And I went and printed up the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center. and got it wire bound and everything. It's a study called Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery, right? And this article from theatlantic.com is called What Kids Are Really Learning About Slavery. What kids are really learning about slavery. They're talking about in school. A new report finds that the topic is mistaught and often sentimentalized, and students are alarmingly misinformed as a result. Okay. So this was a study, and this is why this online course, one of the reasons why it's so important, right? They surveyed 1,000 1,000 high school seniors across the country, 1,000 high school seniors, okay? And they also surveyed 1,700 social studies teachers, K through 12, okay? And the group also reviewed 10 commonly used U.S. history textbooks and examined 15 sets of state standards to assess what educators teach, what students know, what educators teach, what publishers include in the textbooks, in curriculums, and what standards require vis-a-vis slavery, okay? So they found that among 12th graders surveyed, only 8% of 12th graders surveyed could identify slavery as the cause of the Civil War. 92% of 12th graders surveyed did not know that slavery was the cause of the U.S. Civil War. See, a lot of them thought it was states' rights. No, these 11 states, as I outlined, Alabama and Mississippi, South Carolina, they seceded from the Union to maintain slavery. They picked up arms and fought against the Union to maintain slavery because the wealth created from slavery was essential to their way of life, essential to their leisure way of life, okay? Now, fewer than 1/3, only 32% of 12th graders surveyed could correctly name the 13th Amendment as the formal end of the U.S. slavery. They did not know it took a constitutional amendment to end slavery. Now, amendment means to change. Amendment means to alter, okay? Which means the U.S. Constitution sanctioned slavery. So these 12th graders surveyed did not know this, okay? And this has wide-ranging impact because they're going to grow up to be police officers, judges, prosecuting attorneys, human resource managers, politicians, teachers, doctors. One of them is going to grow up to be president of the United States. We already saw what happens when you have a president like this ignorant one who is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who has a poor understanding of history. Okay. Now, 35% thought the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863, did not free the enslaved Africans. If you read it, and you can go to loc.gov, the Library of Congress's website, when you read it, it tells you that the slaves in the states of rebellion are free. The slaves in the states in the Union and the border states, like Missouri, Kentucky, Delaware, these border states that stayed in the Union, they were allowed to keep their slaves. So the Emancipation Proclamation was a military strategy, okay? But the states seceded from the Union. So you don't have a right to tell them what they can do. This is why you needed the 13th Amendment. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. That's a misunderstanding of history, okay? And now, only 46% of 12th graders surveyed could identify the Middle Passage as the transport of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to North America. So when you understand that the condition and the position that African Americans are in today is based upon the trajectory of history, based upon a sequence of historical events that lead up to a large event taking place, and based upon a trajectory of history gets you to this point here. And you have to make a decision based upon an understanding of history to lay out a plan of which direction to go into. which direction to go, which direction to go into. All right. So if you don't understand your history, you're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and your condition is going to get worse as opposed to better. 4 million people, 4 million Obama voters who voted for President Obama in 2012 stayed home in 2016. 1/3 of them were African Americans. 1/3 of them were African Americans. I bet you any amount of money, the 1/3 of African Americans who voted for Obama in 2012 and stayed home in 2016, unless they were victims of voter suppression and they were like barred from voting, but they just stayed home, said, I ain't voting. I guarantee you any amount of money, they never read this document right here. This is available at whitehouse.gov. I bet you any amount of money, most of them never even been to whitehouse.gov. Some of them can't even spell whitehouse.gov. What's this document here, Michael Imhotep? This is called Progress of the African American Community during the Obama administration. How many of y'all have read this document? This is still at whitehouse.gov right now. What does this document show? This shows how policies from President Obama positively impacted the African American community. Whether you're talking about labor market, income, and poverty, whether you're talking about healthcare, whether you're talking about education, support for HBCUs, whether you're talking about criminal justice reform, criminal justice, incarceration rates for African American men and women fell during each year of the Obama administration and are at their lowest points in over 2 decades. Did you know that the U.S. prison population fell to its lowest point in December 2015? It fell from a peak of 2.3 million down to 1.53 million. It dropped by 800,000 under President Obama. Why don't people talk about that? My brother's keeper, advancing equity for women and girls of color, small business, civil rights division, African American judicial appointees. President Obama has made 62 lifetime appointments of African Americans to serve on the federal bench. Do you understand that Trump is changing the landscape of the federal bench, and he's nominating very young, conservative white males to the federal bench, which is a lifetime appointment, and there are more cases that go before the federal bench than the U.S. Supreme Court? How many people have read this document? This is at whitehouse.gov. Search for progress of the African American community during the Obama progress of the African American community during the Obama administration. How many people have actually read this? This was up during President Obama's tenure. I keep hearing people popping off at the mouth talking about what Obama didn't do. Who actually read this? Okay, stop listening to mouth poppers because they don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of these policies under President Obama being reversed under Trump. There have been over 100 policy reversals. Hashtag elections have consequences. Hashtag stop listening to mouth poppers because they don't know what they're talking about. See, I provide you with evidence. Okay, you can go research this yourself. Proper documentation ends all conversation. You have to believe a word that I say. Go do your own research. Proper documentation ends all conversation. We'll post a link here to make it easy for you. See, I do research. I do radio here in Detroit. Many of y'all watch me 9, 10 a.m. the Superstation, African History Network show. I used to do morning radio here in Detroit. Thursday morning, Steve Hood show, every Thursday. Did that over a year. Okay, I do constant research so I can document back up what I'm talking about. Now, one of the online courses that you're going to get in this bundle pack is called African American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump. Voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. African American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. Okay, now that is a actual lecture that I've done where I deal with a lot of things that Trump is doing, how he's reversing a lot of policies from President Obama, redeclaring a war on drugs May 12, 2017, reversing President Obama's initiative to end the usage of privatized prisons for federal prisoners, all this stuff. Okay, and there's a lot more I deal with in that, but there's also an online class that you get in the bundle pack of 10 online courses That's one of them in there also. It's on sale right now, $60. It includes Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school also, okay? So we posted the link here on the thread of the broadcast for progress of the African-American community in the era of Donald Trump. It's still at whitehouse.gov. Trump didn't take it down. I'm looking at it right now. It's still there. And I keep hearing people calling the radio shows, calling the national radio shows, calling the Reverend Al Sharpton show, calling the 910 a.m., talking about what Obama didn't do, and 99, and on social media. Now, watch this. 99.9% of the time when I hear these mouth poppers popping off, they never provide this document. I wonder why. And they provide no evidence. Stop listening to mouth poppers. All right, let's continue here. Let's look at some of your comments. Deborah said, you're a smart man. Maxine said, thank you. Melvin, more knowledge to soak up. Mr. Imhotep, this is much needed info. Well, that's what we do here at the African History Network. I provide the evidence. See, I do research. This is just information here on my presentation on the film Black Panther. That does not include the PowerPoint presentation. All right. This is research right here. Okay. This is just like recent articles here. There's research. And then this file folder here, see, this is the file folder for the online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't keep teaching in schools. See, these are like notes, a bunch of notes for that. These are articles, notes, things like this. That does not include the PowerPoint presentation, okay? Because that's why it's a 7-session, 14-hour online course. It's all on demand and it's bonus content. Okay, this is stuff for the online course. Okay, so you have to do research so you know what you're talking about. All right, that's not even all of it because that doesn't even include some of the archaeological studies. Yeah, that doesn't even include the archaeological studies, which is in a separate stack. All right. Okay. So let's go back to this here. Let me look at some. Okay, Obama had it bad. It's never easy to be a trailblazer. Well, he had it doubly bad. He had some indifferent African Americans who were ignorant to politics, and he was getting it from white Republicans. Shirley said progress of the African American during progress of Black people during the Obama administration. Yes, at whitehouse.gov. Whitehouse.gov. Deborah said, what? Okay, what are you referring to, Deborah? Christy said, now we're getting down to it. Okay, so let's continue here. And I'm not saying President Obama was perfect. I had some disagreements with him, but I had a whole lot more agreements with President Obama than disagreements. And I had a whole lot more agreements with President Obama than this white supremacist fool right here that's reversing all of this stuff. Oh, no, you can't even compare the two. And what I found very interesting is a lot of these African-American pundits who were so vocal about President Obama, they're not as vocal about Trump, and there's more about Trump to criticize and be vocal about. And then you got Professor Eddie Fraud on MSNBC. It's Professor Eddie Claude. I call him Professor Eddie Fraud because he's a fraud. Okay, so during the election, he told Black people especially, don't vote for president. He said, you may vote for other stuff. He said, don't vote for president, because it was between Trump and Hillary Clinton. He said, don't vote for president. Now he has a job on MSNBC as a contributor criticizing Trump. Well, you told people don't vote for president. How the hell you think they got Trump? I know Russian involvement. I told people about Russian involvement during the election. I said, you need to take your Black ass out here and vote, make sure this fool doesn't get in office, because all hell's going to break loose if this fool gets in office. People didn't want to listen. You had people that thought it was cute to vote for Jill Stein. Jill Stein was polling at 2% national polls. Are you crazy? If you can count Okay, how many people can count? Let's do this. Let's do this quick. Let's do this. Let's do this right quick, right? How many people watching can count? How many African Americans were registered to vote in the 2016 election cycle? Okay. Okay, Deborah said, please keep on this site. Okay. What are you talking about, Deborah? Okay, how many African Americans were registered to vote in the 2016 presidential election? 16.4 million. 16.4 million registered to vote. What percentage actually voted? 59%. That was a 7 percentage point drop from 2012. 59%. Okay. Now, there was rapid voter suppression taking place. I said this during the election. I said this leading up to November 8, 2016. If you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you can go and you can listen to my podcast of my radio shows, because I was doing radio 5 days a week. I was doing national radio, the Michael Imhotep show on the Palmer Radio Network, and I was telling people, I was warning people, providing evidence. I said, look, we can't let this fool get in office, because I saw what was coming. I listened to and watched over 100 campaign speeches and interviews that Trump did. I'm researching him. I'm doing the fact checking on his statements and seeing that he's grossly lying and does not know what he's talking about. And I read his 13 policies at his website, DonaldJTrump.com. And I said, we can't let this happen. And people wanted to act a fool, stay home, and all this other stuff, vote for Jill Stein. They thought it was cute, right? So Jill Stein was polling, if I remember correctly, 2% national polls. If all 16, oh no, here's the other thing. Jill Stein said she was going to get black people reparations if she became president. She's polling at 2% national polls. She could have promised every Negro a Cadillac and a BMW and reparations, and wouldn't have to live on none of it, because she didn't have a chance in hell of winning. If all 16.4 million, if you can count, if all 16.4 million African Americans registered to vote voted for Jill Stein twice, she still would have lost by a landslide. And I'm looking at people talking about Jill Stein and she's going to get us reparations. I'm sitting back, I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, Negro, can you count? Are you paying attention to this? Now, December 2015, Jill Stein made a trip to Russia. And Jill Stein was at the 10th anniversary of Russia Today TV. And she was sitting at somebody's table. I can't remember the name of the man. His last name rhymes with Putin. She was sitting at somebody's table. She was sitting at Vladimir Putin's table across from him. Vladimir Putin is sitting here. To the right of Vladimir Putin is Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who just so happened to become Donald Trump's national security advisor after President Obama told Donald Trump's ignorant ass, don't hire this guy because I had to fire him. And he became the national security advisor anyway. And then Trump had to fire him because Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates revealed information that this guy was open to being blackmailed after Trump told this fool, don't hire this guy. This the dude sitting next to Putin, December of 2015 in Russia. Who's sitting across the table from these two guys? Jill Stein. Every time you shake this tree, a Russian falls out of it. I don't know what it is. 150 Russians fell out this tree. But is all this a coincidence? Every time you shake this goddamn tree, a Russian falls out. I can't figure it out. Is all this a coincidence? There's no collusion. There's no coordination. All of this is a coincidence. Is that what we're supposed to believe? Yeah, okay, all right. You're going to see. I told people what was going on. And James Clapper, former director of the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, this past week, he was interviewed, and he basically said he said that the initiative to meddle in the election for Russia was directed by Putin to help Trump win. So, you know, I told people what was happening during the election. And you go back, listen to my podcast, you see I was right. Okay. Now, let me see. Do I have this picture? Let's see. We got it. Okay. NBC.com. Let me see, because I don't want you to think I'm making this up. All right. So I want to show you this. You go research this yourself. Okay. So let's look at this here. And I warned people about Jill Stein during the election. And even though I voted for Hillary Clinton, it wasn't because I like Hillary. It's because I read her policies. And I knew her policies were a hell of a lot better than Trump. And I knew that, number one, I did fact checking on her statements. About 80 to 88, I'm sorry, about 88% of the time she told the truth. Because I did fact checking, and I have 8 different fact checking sources that I use. Fact check her statements. You can go back and listen to my podcast during the debates, because we went through on my radio show and did fact checking of statements from the 2 candidates made during the debates. Also, all that's documented. You can go back and listen to that, and I provide you with the sources. Okay, so let's look at this here. This is from NBCnews.com. Guess who came to dinner with Flynn and Putin? Now, this is from April 18th, 2017. April 18th, 2017. You got Vladimir Putin. You got Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. This is in Russia. You got Jill Stein right here. The head table of a gala celebrating the 10th anniversary of Russia Today, which is state-run TV, in December of 2015 included President Vladimir Putin and American retired General Michael Flynn. And then you got Jill Stein sitting here also. I wonder why she was there. Did she get lost? GPS take her off course? We're still trying to figure out who paid for her to go. Who paid for her lodging? Read this article. Guess who came to dinner with Flynn and Putin? NBCnews.com. Okay, I got a bunch of stuff because I did research on her. I talked about this on Steve Hood's show, and some people didn't like it, want to jump on me. All this, not physically, they're not stupid, but they called in, didn't like it. Oh, and then because I dealt with this like about February, I think it's about February of 2017. Then all this other stuff, these other news outlets start talking about all this other stuff start popping up. It's like, oh, I tried to tell you. Okay, let's post this link here. You can go research this yourself. Proper documentation ends our conversation. I read articles from BuzzFeed and all this stuff, a number of different sources dealing with her being in Russia. All right. And then after the terrible results of the election, right? Remember, Jill Stein tried to raise money to pay for a recount. I said, you should raise money to pay for a recount. A lot of this was your fault. See, in Michigan, Trump won Michigan by 10,704 votes. He won Michigan by 0.2 of a percentage point. 54,000 people were knocked off the voter rolls in Michigan because of the cross-checking system, which was ran by Chris Kobach, who was Secretary of State in Kansas. It knocked 1.1 million people off the voter rolls nationally. It targeted the cross-checking system. How many people have not heard of the cross-checking system? See, this is why we need to do research, because the same methods they used for voter suppression in 2016, they're going to use November 6, 2018 for the midterm elections, and many of us still haven't figured this stuff out. So the cross-checking system targeted people based upon ethnically sounding names and people who were more likely to vote Democratic. And what it said was that James Brown in Detroit, the argument they made was that people were registered to vote in multiple states and they were voting illegally, voting in 2 states or more. So they said James Brown in Detroit, Michigan was the same James Brown of Cleveland, Ohio. Or even better, um, Jamal Jamal Hakeem in Detroit was the same Jamal Hakeem in Cleveland. So this person is voting twice, so we're gonna knock them off the voter roll. This is what they did. Not 1.1 million people off the voter roll. I deal with this in the online course. African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. So 54,000 people were knocked off the voter rolls in Michigan because of the cross-checking system. And in Michigan, 50,000 people voted for Jill Stein. That's 104,000. Trump won Michigan by 10,704 votes. This is what I was warning people about, because I'm looking at them. I'm looking at Republicans working to steal the election. Massive voter suppression taking place. And people didn't see it and still don't realize what happened. 3 types of people in the world: people who watch things happen, people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, people who don't know what the hell just happened. Check out this article from AtlantaBlackStar.com. Just the one, yeah. How to get rid of 7 million African American and Latino votes without anyone noticing. This deals with the cross-checking system that many people still don't know about, and I've done the presentation dealing with African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump. I've done it in Atlanta, done it in Detroit, a few times in Detroit. I've done it with other city that I talk about it in. Every time I ask a question about the cross-checking system, nobody knows what it is. All right, let's continue here. How's everybody doing? How much time we have left? Okay, let's keep going here. All right, so let's go back to this. All right, so some of the things we deal with in the online class: ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, we deal with what was the transatlantic slave trade. What were some of the events that led to the transatlantic slave trade starting? Because it's the result of a sequence of historical events, and we have to deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. What role did Christopher Columbus play in the transatlantic slave trade? So Columbus is essential. It's because Columbus helped lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, the exploitation of indigenous people. Okay, and because of the lands he's conquering during his 4 voyages, right? So he was born in Genoa, Italy. He was Italian. He dies in Spain in 1506, okay? And he was a Genoese navigator and explorer whose transatlantic voyages opened the way for European exploration, exploitation, and colonization of the Americas. He began his career as a young seaman in the Portuguese merchant marine. So he's sailing around the west coast of Africa in 1482, picking up Africans, all right? So one of the things we have to do is stop telling our children that Columbus discovered America. And these are some of the actual slides from the online course, right? There are a couple of main reasons why Columbus did not discover America. Yes, it's true you can't discover somewhere where people already are, 1. 2, 70% of the people Columbus encountered on his 4 voyages were African people, because we were already in those areas. We've been in this land we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years. I'm coming to that in a minute. Because even though August 20th, 1619 happened, Jamestown, Virginia, okay, even though the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory called South Carolina in the 1520s and other territories here in the U.S., this was our land stolen from us. We were here before Native Americans came into existence. But the number one reason why Columbus did not discover America is because Columbus never came to the land we call the United States of America. He's in the Americas, he's in the Western Hemisphere, but he never comes to the land we call the United States of America. So very quickly here, when we look at where he goes on his 4 voyages, starting August 3rd, 1492, when he sets sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, he goes into the Bahamas, which he calls San Salvador. He goes into Cuba and Hispaniola, which we call Haiti. Second voyage, September 1493, he goes into the West Indies and Boricuan, which we call Puerto Rico, and he goes into Jamaica in 1494. Now, Jamaica is going to fall into the hands of the British in, I think it's 1739. It falls to the hands of the British, okay? And you're going to see these European nations fighting each other and killing each other over these new lands, these new countries, okay? Now, these are the same European nations which were Germanic people or barbarians before they were formed in the nations. They were groups of barbarians like the Anglos, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Lombards, the Picts, the Alans, the Franks, things like this. They've been killing for each other for hundreds of years. Then they're going to organize themselves in the nations and keep killing each other for hundreds of years. And they're killing each other for these new lands. And it's going to lead up to the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885 in Berlin, called for by Otto von Bismarck, because they have been killing each other so much, right, over Africa. So they decide to carve Africa up into colonies, and they redraw the geographical boundaries of these African nations around the areas that have the natural resources that the respective European nations want. It's about 9 European nations. No African representation there. And they carved them up because they had been killing each other so much over these different lands and over the natural resources of Africa. And we know that Britain was the biggest purveyor of the violence and the biggest purveyor of the colonizing, things like this, right? And because of the factories that Britain creates, builds, and because of an almost unlimited amount of natural resources that Britain is going to have in their colonies, in the lands that they conquer, this is going to lead to the Industrial Revolution in the 1790s. The Industrial Revolution starts in Britain. Is able to take place because of the factories, because they can now mass produce products, but also because Britain has an almost unlimited amount of raw materials from African nations, from the Caribbean, and they can produce the cotton and things like this. Third voyage, May 1498, Trinidad and Venezuelan mainland, okay, in South America. And see, this is why a couple weekends ago, when it was actually last weekend, when Meghan Markle marries Prince Harry, this is why I did the Facebook Live broadcast and it's on YouTube. I said, we don't honor and celebrate colonizers. She's marrying into a family of colonizers. You have to understand the history of Britain. 100 years ago, 1/5 of the world population was under British rule because they had conquered so many people. And in her crown or whatever they put on her head, there were 53 flowers, which represents the 53 nations that Britain colonized and still has control or influence over today. So we don't honor and celebrate colonizers. What did Shuri say in Black Panther? She said, "Don't sneak up on me, colonizer." We do not honor and celebrate colonizers. And this is what the royal family is. They have a history of this. You go back to 1562, Sir John Hawkins, who picks up enslaved Africans, right? And Queen Elizabeth I at first was against it, but when she saw the profits, she then sanctioned the slave trade. So when you study the history of Britain, what they did in Kenya, what they did in Nigeria and Ghana, okay, what they did in the Caribbean, what they did to India. So the wealth and opulence that you saw displayed at the beautiful church and you saw displayed there in England, right? And Great Britain is England, Scotland, and Wales. That came from the oppression of African people, and they're still oppressing African people to this day. This is why we don't honor colonizers. So some people said, oh, they're in love. My question is, what the hell does love have to do with this? We're talking about the oppression of African people. All right, now, let's continue here. So, third voyage, May 1498, okay? Fourth voyage, May 1504, Panama and Honduras in Central America. So Columbus never comes to the land we call the United States of America. We need to stop lying to our children, telling them that Columbus discovered America. No, he didn't. And 70% of the people that Columbus encounters on his 4 voyages were African people. Read The First Americans Were Africans, documented evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, okay? Read The First Americans Were Africans, documented evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. This is one of the books that we cite in the course. All right, you don't have to buy into these books, but we use these for reference, okay? All right, so how's everybody doing? But you got to go back and watch the Facebook Live broadcast I did dealing with the royal wedding, because I went through and broke this down historically, okay? Because see, December 2015, when then Prime Minister David Cameron went to Jamaica, Jamaica was one of the former colonies of Britain. The Jamaicans were demanding reparations, one, but first they were demanding an apology for the enslavement in Jamaica. He refused to give an apology, and he said that it's time to move on from slavery. And they let alone they're not going to pay reparations. So see, you have to understand this history. And when you have Trump who talks about S-hole countries, he calls African nations and Haiti and El Salvador S-hole countries. He doesn't talk about white supremacy and racism and the colonization of these countries, the decimation of the population, the raping of these countries of the mineral resources by European nations like Britain, like France. He doesn't talk about that. This is how you got those countries, because before, back when these were groups of barbarians, those were S-hole countries. Even before they were countries, those were S-hole kingdoms. Those were, it's the Moors, these African Moors, who are going to go in and civilize Europe, bring these Europeans out of the Dark Ages. Europe was rife with filth, no sanitation system, rife with disease running rampant. If it hadn't been for the Moors, even when the bubonic plague hits in 1347, and hits in spurts from 1347 to 1400, if it hadn't been for the Moors that were still there, it would have probably wiped Europeans out, because see, Europe lost between 1/4 to 1/3 of their population. They lost between 25 million and 75 million people because of the Black Death, bubonic plague that hits in 1347. Okay, and then they rewarded the Moors by enslaving them, kicking them out, enslaving them, conquering them. Okay, so let's continue here. All right, now let me go back here. Okay, here we go. All right, so some of the other things we deal with in the online course: ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We talk about Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, documented evidence, and there's an African presence here going back at least 51,700 years before Native Americans come into existence. Page 14 of his book, he talks about the discovery made by Dr. Albert Goodyear in Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004, okay? And let's see, Dr. Albert Goodyear is an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, okay? And they found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines fairly documenting the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. South America going back at least 56,000 years ago. There's new evidence that pushes that date back to about at least 100,000 years ago. This is before Native Americans come into existence, even in this country. Okay. Asians come here around 3000 BC. The Africans and Asians intermix, and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Okay, you're also going to have groups of the indigenous African people, or what some call Black Indians, but they're going to be reclassified when European settlers come here also. Okay, so this is an article from ScienceDaily.com. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. This is from November 18th, 2004. This deals with Dr. Albert Goodyear's discovery. There's a picture of him here, Dr. Albert Goodyear, University of South Carolina. And let me see what else here. Okay, so we deal with when did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? If you need me to post a link so you can register for our online courses in our bundle pack again, let me know. We have a bundle pack now. It's on sale $60, regularly $130. It includes this course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'af for understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We do it. Did Africans sell themselves into slavery? Not complicated history, because it's not like what many of us have been taught. Were African people in America before the slave trade? Yes, we were. There were Moors. There were the Africans known as the Moors here also. And Spain is kicking out Moors, conquering them. Some flee, but some are going to be enslaved and taken into Spanish territories, and some are brought here to this land enslaved also. The 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to rethink everything. Insurance companies that took out insurance policies on enslaved Africans. So this is something that's not talked about a lot. You know, we talk about the cotton produced, things like this, right? You had 40 insurance companies, over 40 insurance companies in this country that took out insurance policies on enslaved Africans on the plantations, okay? But also because of, there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. And some of it was very dangerous work, like working in coal mines, working in sawmills, working on steam engines, or what have you. And sometimes slave owners would take out insurance policies on the slaves on the plantation. So when they died untimely, they cash in on the insurance policy. But also you have insurance companies taking out insurance policies on the slave ships as well, okay? We do a Freemasonry in America and the Founding Fathers, because the foundation of Freemasonry comes from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and the teachings that the Moors take into Europe. Okay, so when we look at this, is why understanding the Moors is so important. And one of the books we cite is Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Golden Age of the Moor. Okay, which is one of the best books dealing with the history of the Moors. And there are essays in here from, Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay and Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Wayne Chandler, some experts dealing with the history of the Moors. So, the Moors go on in 711 AD into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal. They defeat the Vandals and the Visigoths. They're going to settle in the southern portion of Spain. But the teachings they're taking in come from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. George G.M. James and Stolen Legacy said the Moors were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. And they're going to teach Europeans, to our detriment, but they're going to teach Europeans. And you have a group that's formed in 1118 AD during the Second Crusades called the Poor Knights of Christ, who are later going to become known as the Knights Templar, And they become very powerful, very knowledgeable. When the Moors go in, about 90 to 95% of Europeans are illiterate. You're going to have kings and queens who are illiterate. King James Stewart I, who in 1600 commissioned his version of the Bible to be written in 1611, it was completed. He was illiterate. King James Stewart I of England was illiterate. He can neither read nor write. But the Knights Templar are going to be disbanded around 1308, 1309. October 13th, Friday the 13th, the ones in France are going to be disbanded. And this is said to be the day that the novel stopped. This is one of the reasons why people fear the number 13. And the fear of the number 13 is called frigatriskaidekaphobia. Frigatriskaidekaphobia. But when the Knights Templar are disbanded, those teachings go underground. They're going to resurface as the Yorkshire right as the Scottish rites of the Scottish rites of the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians and other secret societies or society secrets, right? But those teachings are going to come to the U.S. in the 13 colonies with the founding fathers. Okay, so this is how you get because 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, right? So when you look at something like this here, you see the Washington Monument. That's an ancient African symbol called a tekken, which comes from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. It's a symbol of resurrection coming from that mythology. So there were 1,200 tekkenu throughout ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Egypt is an Arabic word of Greek derivation. That's not what we call it. Kemet. It's one of the original terms meaning the land of the blacks. You may also see Ta Mary, which means the beloved land. Today, there are only about 12 tekkenu left, okay? But when we look at Freemasonry, and Tony Browder talks about this in Egypt on the Potomac, okay? And that book, Egypt on the Potomac, deals with how the layout of Washington, D.C. is based upon ancient African principles coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. The word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light or sons and daughters of light was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of ancient Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the concept of going to college and getting your credentials in a series of degrees comes out of the temples in ancient Kemet, where the initiates went to study for 42 years. This is where this comes from. And for eons, the sun or light was a metaphor for knowledge. And even today, when you watch a cartoon, right, and the cartoon character gets a bright idea, which means a good idea, and a little light bulb goes off over their head. So Doc McStuffin or Mickey Mouse or Tom and Jerry, what have you, whatever you're watching, a light bulb goes off over their head, or Bart Simpson, right? They have a bright idea because light has been synonymous with knowledge. And they were called the child of light, not the child of darkness. So the Moors, these Africans known as the Moors, are taking the light from ancient Africa, from ancient Kemet, into the dark continent, which was Europe. Africa was not the dark continent. Africa was in the light. They had the knowledge. It was Europe that was in the dark ages because the Vandals and the Visigoths crushed the western portion of the Roman Empire in 476 AD and cast Europe into the dark ages. It was Europe that was in ignorance and darkness and illiteracy. And it's these Africans known as the Moors who taken the light from ancient Kemet, from ancient Africa, and taking it into the darkness and bringing Europeans out of the dark ages. And it all came back to kick us in the behind. Okay, I'm serious. If you read Golden Age of the Moor, you see what I'm talking about. So 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. And 13 of the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution were Freemasons as well. Read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. Fantastic. It's only about 70, 72 pages. Fantastic book. Man, that book is deep. Ooh, because and see, if you ever go to Washington, D.C., Browder does tours of Washington, D.C., and he takes you around Washington, D.C. I've been on a tour yet, but I've read his book, Egypt on the Potomac. He has a lecture about it as well. And he takes you around Washington, D.C. and shows you different monuments, different buildings and things like this, and shows you how the layout of Washington, D.C. is a copy of the layout of ancient Egypt and where all that comes from. Okay. All right. And Browder, we're in the Black Friday documentaries together also. Tony Browder, that's my man right there. I've interviewed him, I think, 6 times. Browder is bad. That's a bad brother. He's in the Hidden Colors 2 and Hidden Colors 4 also. So here's a bronze statue of Heru and Asar in the middle and Aset, who the Greeks called Horus, Osiris, and Isis. All right. So we deal with all this in the class. And then you have Aset with the baby Heru, who was born of a virgin birth on December 25th. That's ancient story goes back to ancient Nubia about 3300 BC. Okay, ancient Nubia, or Ta-Nehisi and Nubia, was the mother of ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt. And then from Auset, who was the virgin, who had an immaculate conception and gave birth to Heru or Horus on December 25th. From that story, you get the Black Madonna child, which was worshipped all throughout Europe, in Russia, in France, in Prague, all throughout Europe, in Italy and Spain. They still have statues of the Black Madonna child. In Poland, you have this story of the Black Madonna child. This is when Europeans worshiped the African woman. Okay, but then with the rise of white supremacy and racism, you're going to get a reinterpretation of that into the decolorized version of what you see today. Okay, so this is why you have to understand history. And the people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past and the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. The people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community, right? So this right here, I found out about this when I was preparing for one of my interviews with Runoko Rashidi. So this is back in about 2013, 2014. Runoko Rashidi wrote a book. He wrote many books, but back at this time, he wrote a book called Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe. The African Presence in Early Europe. And Runoko was a brilliant, brilliant brother. I've interviewed him a number of times. And it dealt with the African presence in early Europe and the Moors, right? So he had, and I had already read Golden Age of the Moor, but in one of the pages of Renoko's book, he had these pictures of these flags, right? So I started doing research on this. Now, this is the official flag with the blue background. That's the official flag, the national flag of Corsica, which is a French island in the Mediterranean, Corsica. And the other flag is the national flag of Sardinia, which is an Italian island in the Mediterranean. So you got a French island, Italian island, right? They both have Moors heads on them as their national flags. Well, why do they have Moors heads? These are African people. These ain't Europeans with a tan. So why do they have these Moors heads on? So Runoko had these pictures in his book, and I started doing research on this. So the Moors were in these areas, and they had conquered either the entire country or a lot of it. And when they were expelled and when they were conquered, a lot of them are going to be enslaved, right? And originally, so you look here, you see that they have a bandana on. And if you look at the cover of the DVD cover of Hidden Colors, hopefully you got an authorized version. Hopefully you get a bootleg version. Okay, when you order from me, you get the authorized ones. We order these from Tariq Nasheed. You see the Moor's head here. This is Hidden Colors too. You see the Moor's head here with the bandana and the hoop earring, right? These are African men. So originally, when you research this, originally the bandanas were blindfolds because they were conquered and they were prisoners. But for the purpose of being politically correct and for tourism purposes, they turned the blindfolds into bandanas. But these were African men, and they put them on their national flags because it was a monumental effort to conquer the Moors. This is another example of it, all throughout history. Okay, all right. But this is just some of the information we deal with in the online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? And it's part of a 10-course online bundle pack we have now. It's on sale $60, regularly $130. It's not going to be $60 much longer. But this is some of the stuff we deal with. If you need me to post a link so you can register for the online course again, let me know. They're all on demand, so you don't have to worry about getting home at a certain time, things like that. Watch at your own pace. They're all on demand. You can watch from around the world. Okay, what was I doing? All right. So we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to rethink everything. Because when these archaeological discoveries come out, right, and they find, skeletons of Homo sapiens in Morocco that date back 300,000, 350,000 years ago. And this is 100,000 years older than the oldest remains they have of Homo sapiens that were found in Ethiopia that date back 195,000 years ago. This is flipping the archaeological world upside down. And it's causing scientists and archaeologists and paleontologists to have to rethink everything. So the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. The deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. You remember back in like what, 98? Juvenile had that saw back that thing up. When all this new evidence comes out, they keep having to back that thing up. They keep having to back the dates up. Insurance companies took out policies on slave ships and enslaved Africans on plantations, Freemasonry, America and the founding fathers, origins of the term America and Africa, because it's much more complicated than people thought. Origins of the term America and Africa. Africa was not named after a Roman general named Publius Cornelius Scipio. His family's last name wasn't even Africanus. His family's last name was Scipio. People just repeat nonsense, don't do research. The problem with slave movies and why we're being bombarded with slave movies and a slave TV show are set in Heru and the origins of the Immaculate Conception story, links to ancient Kemet and early Christianity, and the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712, because Willie Lynch never historically existed. There's another one to throw in the garbage can. Okay, so those are just some of the things we deal with in the online course. All right. So how's everybody doing? Okay, and we also have in the online course, it also includes great African women in history, the mothers of civilization, African-American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. It's a lot. It's a lot there. You can watch at your own pace, okay? Williams said, my DNA from African ancestry, as well as National Geographic, states that my ancestors were Berbers, Moors, okay? Yeah, use AfricanAncestry.com, not Ancestry.com, not DNA Ancestry. AfricanAncestry.com is African American owned and operated. They have a much larger database. It's specifically for us. They have a much larger database of African cultures, African high cultures, African tribes. So they can not just tell you which region you're from, they can tell you what country you're from and which high culture, which tribe you're from also. AfricanAncestry.com. William said, just left Rome, Italy, and saw the presence of Moors in their building construction. The presence of the Moors is all throughout Europe. It's in their architecture. It's in their language, like words like Morris or Maurice, okay? Maurice is in reference to the Moors, M-A-U-R-I. The word Moor comes from Moros, M-A-U-R-O-S, which is Greek. Maurus, M-A-U-R-U-S, which is Latin, spoken by Romans, but the Romans are also used the word Mauri, M-A-U-R-I, like Mauri Gators, okay? Because the Moors are going to teach Europeans how to work with leather, things like this. And then you have a word like Mauritania. Mauritania is Latin. Mauritania means land of the black-skinned people. Okay, read page 5 of Golden Age of the Moor. So it's in their language. The presence, the Moors left an indelible presence that cannot be erased. It's in European bloodline also, because they intermix with the European population also. Okay. So it's all throughout Europe. It's in some of the Europeans in their coat of arms, the African presence. So one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we think that when the transatlantic slave trade starts in 1440, 1441 with the Portuguese, okay, and then the Spanish are coming right behind the Portuguese, we think this is the first time Europeans have come in contact with African people, but we don't know about the 800-year contact they had with the Moors, and hostility is going to build up. And you have a dehumanizing of the Moors, which causes, especially in Spain, causes Catholic forces to galvanize support around expelling the Moors, okay? But there's going to be a dehumanization process that's going to take place of the Moors also, to change the way people think about them, because the Moors were held in high regard as well. Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay talks about this. All right. William said, absolutely. Tour guides don't tell the true history. William said, Sandy said, absolutely. It's about carbon, melanin, and water. Let's see here. Okay, post a link. If you need me to post a link again, let me know. And these online classes, these are something you can go through with your children also. They're very visual. We have PowerPoint presentations, video clips, things like that. Annette's in New York City watching. Nothing but pride being renewed through knowledge, Melvin said. Sandy, how you doing? Brenda, good evening, family. Anybody on here from Detroit? Anybody on here from Detroit? William said, is there physical evidence? Physical evidence of what? How did he get this evidence so I can look into sources? Which evidence are you referring to? Okay, Tuesday, May 29th at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, we're having an event for children. There'll be about 150 school children, approximately, that I know of, but there's still room for more because the General Motors Theater seats 300. We'll show excerpts of the documentary Out of Darkness, Nile Valley Civilization. Director Amadeus Christ will be there, and this deals with ancient Egypt. And then also I'll do a presentation dealing with the film Black Panther, a Black Panther analysis, African culture, history, and Afrofuturism. I'll do about 30 minutes. And this presentation I'm doing is designed for children. So there'll be 6th grade to 12th grade there. There'll be some adults there also. So come out, this free event, open to the public, come on. Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, 315 East Warren Avenue, Highland Park, Michigan. We posted it here on the thread of the broadcast. Is also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage. I have 2 presentations on DVD dealing with the film Black Panther at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. One of them is also on digital download as well. So we'll post the information here. So Black Panther analysis, African culture, history, and Afrofuturism. That's basically a 3-hour presentation. And there's a shorter presentation I've done called Lessons from the film Black Panther. Lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda to vote. And then we have a bundle pack, an 8 DVD bundle pack, 8 DVD Black Panther bundle pack, where you get 5 of my DVD lectures, including 2 dealing with the film Black Panther. And then you get 3 documentaries also. Okay, that's on sale, $80, regularly $130. The 8 DVD Black Panther bundle pack. Okay, William said there are monuments with Egyptian hieroglyphs on them in Rome. Oh yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Well, you see, and see what happened was the Tekenu that I talk about, Tekenu for plural, they have been stolen and taken to other parts of the world, including Vatican City and Rome. So they're going to have the metal netta, the hieroglyphics on them. Okay, you're dealing with thieves, you're dealing with culture bandits, you're dealing with colonizers. William said, I was shocked that my granddaughter was studying Imhotep in the school. Yeah, Imhotep was one of the greatest people who ever lived in human history. CHO2 essential components. Yeah. So African people are carbon-based also. That's what Sandy is talking about. The documentary Urban Kryptonite, this documentary here that's available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Urban Kryptonite, African Roots, Foreign Diseases, which it deals with holistic health for African Americans, and it deals with how many of the diseases we have today are related to the foods that we eat. And historically, we did not have these diseases, what we can do about it. You have Dr. Laila Africa in here, Dr. B. Sirius, Dr. Aris Latham, Dr. Ali Muhammad, Cochise Tarak Sa, Dahuti Mat Ra, some of our top scholars on holistic health in this documentary. It's available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Urban Kryptonite. This is 4 hours. It's a very, very deep, deep documentary. Let's see here. Teach the children and adults the truth, Tracy said. Okay. All right, and then in June 15th through the 17th, I'll be in Atlanta for the Juneteenth celebration. It's a huge Juneteenth celebration in Atlanta, William at Morris Brown College. Last year, they had about 5,000 people that came out. So I'll be there. I'll be speaking that Saturday. I'll have a vendor booth all 3 days as well. I'll also be doing presentations over in the historian tent as well. And then July, the third weekend in July, I think that's July 13th through the 15th. I think it is. Third weekend in July, I should be at the Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo in Atlanta. So I'll be back in Atlanta in July. I'll be in Atlanta in June 15th through the 17th. I'll be back in Atlanta. I think that's June. I think that's July 13th through the 15th, the third weekend in July. Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. I'm usually one of the presenters on that last day on Sunday. So I'll be there. And then in Philadelphia in September, I'll be at Dr. Boyce Watkins All Black National Convention. And there's somewhere else. Return of the Gods. Return of the Gods in San Diego, August, I think it's 3rd through the 5th. Herb Alchemist, you see her here on our Facebook fan page. I'll be there with Professor Kabahaya Wapa Kamene, one of my teachers, Lord Jamar, Rod Digger. Some of you saw the Facebook Live broadcast we did. That was right after I was on their podcast show, and Herb Alchemist, they had us on as guests. So that's going to air Wednesday. So we'll post that link on YouTube when that interview airs. That was a really good interview. It was a crazy interview. We talked about some of everything. And Return of the Gods is coming up. We'll post the information for that. We have a discounted 3-day, it's August 10th through the 12th in San Diego, August 10th through the 12th. And we have a discounted 3-day bundle pack from the African History Network also. We'll post a link here, and it's also available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well. Okay, let's post that here also. All right. If you want to bring me in to do a presentation for your group or organization, if you want me on a panel discussion, email me at info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or contact me through our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right. Okay, William said, I have a PhD in religious studies and apologetics and know the truth, but cannot lie to my people. All right. And decided not to take the pastoral route in school, now for a master's in distance education. All right. Any plans for Hampton Roads? Is that in Hampton, Virginia? Where is that? No plans now. If you want to bring me in, do a presentation for your group or organization or what have you, we can set that up. Email me, info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. Also, if you want to advertise with the African History Network, because we reach thousands of people on a weekly basis, and we put your ads in our in the podcast of our radio shows. When advertise with the African History Network, email me at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com to promote your business, your event, website, etc. Customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. All right, look, we got to get out of here. Hey, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Remember, people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. Right now, let's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.